You are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donica Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us. Welcome, everyone, to the ladies' room. Kendrick Shope is our next guest. She is a self-proclaimed workaholic, but her efforts have clearly paid off. She's the creator of the leading sales training for women entrepreneurs, Sales School, and the authentic selling process, which has created millions of dollars in revenue and new business for her clients. Kendrick hosts her own podcast and TV show, easy for me to say, reaching nearly 100,000 followers in 6 continents. I just got so choked up by the numbers. Her work has been featured on The Steve Harvey Show, NBC, Forbes, Inc., and more. But her workaholicism has also had its price. Stress is a big factor for numerous medical problems, including shingles. She has had it 3 to 4 times. We're going to talk about that and more. Welcome to the ladies' room, Kendrick Shope.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here in the ladies' room with you.
Well, likewise. Some of my best conversations have happened in the ladies' room.
Me too. As I think back over the course of my life, there have been some good experiences.
So what's the most unique, interesting, or memorable experience you've ever had in the ladies' room?
You know, I have a great story, actually. It's not a ladies' room, it's a men's room. But
even better.
I thought it was a ladies' room. So we were in Chicago, Illinois, and we went to a church in Chicago, Illinois, and it was our first or second time visiting that church, real small church. Mm-hmm. And I said to my husband, I'm going to run to the restroom before we go into service. And so I went into the restroom, and I hear these men talking in the restroom, and I'm in the stall, and I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. And then I hear some whisper, and I had on, heels, 6-inch heels. I mean, I was clearly a woman in the stall. And when I came out, Blake said, "Did you enjoy?" My husband said, "Did you enjoy the men's room?" And I said, "Well, I'm confused." And he said, "The pastor was in there with another employee of the church. They turned around and saw your shoes and said, 'I think somebody's accidentally walked in here. We need to get out.'" And there they are, like a whole group of people stood laughing at me. It was lovely. They all watched me walk out of the men's room. So yeah, it was good times.
So I have actually used men's rooms on purpose at
plenty of times.
and stadiums and whatever. Yeah. And usually I have the gentleman, whoever I'm with, go in and scout it out for me first and then stand guard. But this particular time, he did not do a good job scouting it out. And so I went in with 2 other women to use the ladies' room during intermission in the theater. And there were 4 guys at urinals doing what guys do at urinals. And they were kind of shocked and surprised. And we just were like, we've seen that before.
Yeah.
And we just went, did our thing and used the stalls. But anyway, moving right along.
I think if I hadn't been at a church, I was like, oh, thank you, God, Buddha, whoever, that I didn't walk in on the pastor using a urinal, because, I've used a men's room plenty of time too. I got no problem with that. But walking in church made it awkward.
Well, we're actually going to have our first male guest in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica coming up. We're having Dr. Mike, who is quite the Instagram celebrity.
Okay.
You have quite a following on Instagram. But tell me, how long have you been a workaholic?
I don't know. A long time, as long as I can remember. I think back to before I started my own business, I often joke that I sold drugs, the legal kind. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. And I was a workaholic then as well. I can remember being in Miami and on South Beach with my girlfriends and saying, I just need to do A, B, and C, run in, do this on the computer, run some numbers. Just ridiculous. It's a bit ridiculous, but yeah, as long as I can remember.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think motivated that or started that?
I'm sure it's a little bit of nature. My father's a workaholic. I'm sure it's a little bit of nurture. My father's a workaholic. I also like I like the reward. I'm very much, I come from a sales background, so I'm very much motivated by the carrot or by the reward.
Mm-hmm.
And in my life, the harder you work, the better the reward. I know there are a lot of people who say, oh, that's not necessarily true, or it comes with the cost. And of course it can come with the cost. But in my experience, the harder you work, the more money you make, the more people you help, the bigger vacations you get to take. And I like that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's all wonderful and very, very alluring. But today we're going to talk about the cost.
Yeah.
So you mentioned to me that you've had shingles 3 to 4 times. And I didn't take the time to look up the Guinness Book of World Record for the number of times somebody had shingles, but that's the highest number I've ever heard. How old were you when you first got shingles?
I was mid-20s. Mid-20s.
So you were already a workaholic.
Yeah. I think actually I was probably toying with the idea of starting, maybe I was probably actually late 20s, toying with the idea of starting a business, working my full-time job, and then coming home and working at night, doing the side hustle thing, trying to figure it out, being a hot mess, making all kinds of mistakes, working till 3 or 4 in the morning. That's the first time that I can remember getting shingles.
And what do you remember of the experience? How did it start and where was it on your body?
It was on my lower back, and it followed a nerve pattern, I guess, like it typically does. My mom had shingles before. So I can remember as a child, or I was probably in high school, her saying that the sheets hurt to touch her where they were. And my shirt hurt. My t-shirt hurt. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, shingles is an old person disease. Like, you got to be over 40 to get, not that over 40 is old, by the way, but you got to be over 40.
Over 40 is looking real young to me these days.
It looks real young to me too. But back then, you got to understand, I was 20 something. That's the ignorance of a 20-year-old or whatever, 20 plus year old. So, and it just hurt. And then I began to see these red splotches, really small.
So you had the pain first before the rash.
I did, yeah. And I always do. Every time I can feel it before the rash comes out. And I went to our doctor in Chicago, Illinois, and I said, I think I've got shingles. Is that possible at my age? And of course it was shingles.
And how long did it last? Do you remember?
The first time was the longest, actually. Okay. I'm going to say about 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were very lucky then, because in some people, the rash in most people, it does go away within about 2 weeks, but in some people it can last up to 30 days.
Yeah. I've never had it that long. And the first time was the worst. I'm a habitual, fever blister getter. That's not the proper terminology, but so once I recognized the sensation from it, I was like, oh, the other times I know what's happening here. The minute it rubs on my back the wrong way.
Is it always in the same location?
Always, 100% of the time. Never spreads any further than that, maybe because we act proactively on it. Mm-hmm. But I do remember one time we were here in Arkansas, and I went to a clinic because my physician was out of town or something. I don't remember. I went to a clinic, and I had a PA, and the PAs are wonderful at the clinic, but this PA happened to say to me, I think you need to have an HIV test because nobody gets shingles this many times at your age.
Oh my goodness.
And my 6-year-old was in there with me. Mm. And I remember thinking, oh dear God, like, okay, great. Maybe I do, but oh dear God, don't tell me that in front of my kid. I don't know why. And then a doctor came in after that. Maybe it was a med student, because a doctor came in after that. And the doctor said, you know what? You got the perfect doctor, because my best friend's had shingles 5 times and she's under 40. So I think you're good to go. I don't think you need an HIV test. I think you need less stress.
So I think what this person was thinking about is probably confusing the difference between risk factors and cause and effect. So for everybody who's listening, let's just talk about for a second what the cause of shingles is. All right. The cause of shingles is the herpes zoster virus, which sounds really scary, but that's just the chickenpox virus. And what happens when you get chickenpox is that the virus can remain dormant in your system for decades. And then sometimes for seemingly no reason at all, it just becomes reactivated. And the way it becomes reactivated is exactly what you said. Very often people experience the pain first, and it's described as this burning, itching, stabbing pain that just seems weird on one side of your body. It can be anywhere in your body, but most commonly somewhere in the torso, as you explained, but it can even be on the face, but it's generally only on one side. And then the rash comes, and the rash looks like this blistering eruption, very similar to chickenpox.
Yeah.
And this can be very painful. It can last, as we said, about 2 weeks before the blisters finally scab over and go away. But in some people, and thank God you didn't have this, but in 1 out of 5 people who get shingles, they can develop a complication called post-herpetic neuralgia, or PHN, which can last for months and sometimes even years. And that's just this persistent, horrible nerve pain. Now, most of the time, people get it one time, but it certainly can recur. And usually, as you said, when you get it subsequently, the symptoms are usually not quite as bad. Plus, to hightail it to the doctor.
Absolutely.
And get your antiviral medication as soon as possible.
Exactly.
So were you able to get antiviral medication the first time you had it?
Yeah. The first time was absolutely the worst, and the blisters were more prominent. Every other time they have to shine a light. They haven't broken the skin yet. You can see them under the skin, if that makes sense. And but then the minute they're like, yep, this is shingles, we're gonna give you antiviral. And it's amazing how well I'm very susceptible to the virus. I'm also very reactive to the medicine. The medicine works quickly in me, so I'm fortunate in that way.
Okay. Now, what you were talking about, fever blisters, that doesn't have anything to do with shingles, but that does have to do with herpes. But that's a different herpes virus, and that's what we call herpes type 1, and that's the blisters that you get around your mouth. And since we're in the ladies' room, can I ask you if you've got herpes elsewhere?
No, only on.
Since your daughter is not here in the room with us.
I had them all over my face. So literally in college once, I was almost deathly ill, and we were snowed in and couldn't get to the emergency room, and I had fever blisters from here almost into my eye.
Oh my goodness.
When I saw the doctor, our family physician, he said, I'm scared that they're going to move into her eyeball.
Right. Well, and sometimes it can affect your vision. And shingles can also affect your vision.
I looked like a monster. So I've had it here, and then I've had the other kind of herpes on my lower back, or shingles, but those are the only 2 places.
Well, that's good. Not good. Knock everything. So what this med student or PA was probably thinking in terms of asking you about HIV is that people with HIV or AIDS are much more likely to get shingles. Sure. However, there's a laundry list this long of people much more likely to get shingles. And quite honestly, most of us who are over 35 are at risk of getting shingles because we had chickenpox as kids. And even those of us who didn't have, do you know if you had chickenpox when you were a kid?
I did, yes.
There are some people who have what's called a subclinical case of chickenpox. And that's where it's kind of mild and they don't really have a rash and nobody ever identified it as chickenpox and they went on their merry way. And 98% of people over 35 have had chickenpox or subclinical chickenpox. Many of our kids now have not had chickenpox, but they now have been vaccinated. My kids actually were a little old for the vaccine and they got chickenpox before there was a vaccine available. We don't know what's going to happen in the future with kids who are vaccinated because if intellectually we think they should have a far less likelihood of getting shingles because they've had a far less likelihood of getting chickenpox. However, the chickenpox vaccine is not 100% effective. There are still kids who get vaccinated who will get chickenpox. And similarly, there's a vaccine for shingles. And there's actually a new vaccine for shingles. So everybody who's 50 or older needs to talk to their doctor about getting the vaccine, whether or not they've had shingles. Because, of course, of cases like yours where you get it.
You don't want shingles, yes. Just go ahead and get the vaccine. I'm all for that. And I've heard, so I have a question. I've heard that someone who has had shingles multiple times like me could probably qualify for the vaccine as well. Is that accurate? Because I haven't had it.
Yeah, you should talk to your doctor about what your doctor recommends for you. I can tell you there are no clinical trials amongst people who've had shingles 3 or 4 times and then gotten the vaccine. But what's strange about shingles is, with most of these conditions, having the condition prevents you from having it again. Like with chickenpox, most people don't get chickenpox a second time, but shingles is not like that. And similarly, the vaccine, the older vaccine, was only about 70% or 58 to 70% effective, depending on your age. The newer vaccine, you have to get 2 shots within a 6-month period. And that vaccine is supposed to be like 97% effective. So the punchline there is that even people like me, who I remember I was doing a lecture on shingles, and I hadn't really read up a lot about shingles since medical school, but I was doing this lecture. So I was reading all the research and studying up. And I just started to panic when I read about the post-herpetic neuralgia affecting 1 in 5 people. And I literally, there's a Walgreens about literally 4 minutes from my house. And I literally drove to Walgreens immediately when I read that statistic. And I couldn't get my vaccine fast enough. I thought, oh my God, just my luck. I'm going to get shingles between now and the time this vaccine kicks in. And I had just turned 50. And when I just turned 50, which I won't tell you how many minutes ago that was, but when I just turned 50, the recommendation for the vaccine had just changed, because it used to be we only recommended the vaccine for people 60 and over.
Yeah.
But when I turned 50, for my present, they changed it to people 50 and over. But of course, that doesn't help people like you who got it in your 20s.
Yeah.
So that's important. Anyway, so back to this thing about risk factors, that this well-intentioned but misinformed, misguided healthcare provider was telling you. And of course, nobody should ever, ever, ever discuss anything of sensitivity in front of your child. And that's just breaking every rule that there is on the planet, but certainly in medicine. But anyway, there's a long list of risk factors. So of course, anything that impairs your immune system can increase your risk of getting shingles. And so we're going to get back to the workaholicism, because that's not usually on the list. What we put on the list is, this wonderful 5-letter word, actually 6-letter word, stress. Stress is that sort of big whole laundry basket term that can increase your risk for just about any medical condition. Yeah. And the way it works is by impairing our immune system. The other big risk factor is age, which of course did not apply in your case, but as we age, our immune system generally becomes a little weaker. And then anything else that impairs our immune system, whether it's any chronic illness, of course, AIDS is on the list, but it wouldn't be the first thing that I thought of. Diabetes is increasingly common. Any kind of cancer, whether you've had cancer in the past or currently have cancer, whether you're currently getting chemotherapy or radiation, whether you're on any kind of medication that suppresses your immune system. So even steroids can increase your risk. The other thing that we haven't studied a lot, but can really increase your stress in your life, is sleep deprivation. So we're really focusing on that. And then of course, alcoholism, any kind of drug abuse, and et cetera. But most of the time, most people who get shingles don't have any of those serious risk factors. And they're risk factors. And so all that means is it increases the likelihood. But the number one risk factor is having had chickenpox in the past. So now let's get back to, now I think we've beaten shingles to death. I think the main take home message is this is terrible. If you get it, call your doctor immediately, because to get on antiviral medication, you need to be, as soon as your symptoms break out.
Absolutely.
The first 48 hours. But I think we've also alerted people that they need to talk to their doctors about the vaccine.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
Because there's new recommendations and a new vaccine. But I think many of us who are listening to this podcast want to get more into the workaholic thing. Because many of us are like that. We're very highly motivated, type A individuals. We're balancing one job. I love your term, the side hustle, because we all have more than one job. Mm-hmm. There's a great line from a show my daughter wrote, and she was playing a workaholic, and she said, and she was being accused of having multiple jobs, and she said, "Yeah, but in this economy, who hasn't?"
Exactly. Yeah, right. I love it.
Yeah.
I love
but we also have that whole second shift, the whole mommy job,
yes.
And kind of having several balls in the air. So how do you manage being a workaholic, or do you just kind of deal with it?
I've gotten better at it. You know, I think with age, I've gotten better at it. I'm at a phase in my life, to be quite honest, that I don't like. So it's interesting. I was texting with a colleague earlier today, and I said, I feel like such a slacker at this.
Excuse me?
Yeah, I know, at this moment in my life. And that was her response. She's like, it doesn't resonate with me how that's possible. But I've really scaled back the amount of work hours that I'm willing to do, because I have a 9-year-old, because I want to be present for her, because we got a lot going on in our life, because I don't want to be exhausted every minute of every day. But at work, I do feel like a slacker. I'm not working 16-hour days anymore. And I know that sounds insane when I say it out loud. I've got a mental hang up about it.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is the difference between having a feeling and the reality of the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
two totally different things.
Right. And the feeling is based on comparing the number of hours that you're working to the number of hours that you used to work. But one of the privileges that comes with success, and it is a privilege, is that you're the boss.
Mm-hmm.
You get to decide. Now, the problem when you're the boss and you're a workaholic is your boss is, you know, a slave driver sometimes. And
Yeah.
The boss is carrying this whole big stick, but you're motivated by carrots. So what I would suggest to you is to focus more on the outcome of your efforts and the outcome of your work, rather than the number of hours that you put into it. Or maybe you need to read Tim Ferriss's book about the 4-hour work week.
I know. I actually know Tim. So
I did too.
So yeah, you know, and it's not so much number of hours as an example, but there's a mindset shift that I'm working on here, and it really has come about within the last year and a half. What
do you think has changed?
Well, the business is going to make it. You know, I mean, the business is going to survive. It's going to thrive. And I've tried to afford myself more space in the schedule. Let me put it this way. I don't know that I like more space in the schedule. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to work 16-hour days. I'm clear about that. I was tired. I've got shingles multiple times. I don't want to do that. I also don't like empty space during the hours that I commit to work. So I have certain hours that I commit to work, and I want them to be full. Now I do have a laundry list of CEO type things I could be doing that I don't want to do, that I hand off to people, but I want my days to be full. And so as I've looked at the calendar, you know, next week we got the whole week blocked off to work on sales school, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. I've never really had that luxury before, though. I've always worked on putting our sales school launch together in between customers. And so I look at the week and it's blank, and I'm kind of like, oh my God, I thrive under pressure. I'm a fight or flight person, and I fight. Mm-hmm. Now, 3 months later, after the fight, I crash. But so it's just a new way of learning. I can get really comfortable in my sweats and veg out on Netflix, and it's great until it's not. Right. Until the carrots go away.
Right. Well, and it's kind of the feast or famine thing. And I think you're figuring out, I think what's very interesting is people have this view of success that the microphone can drop at any time. That gives new meaning to mic drop.
Listen, I get it.
I think people have this view of success, that it's a destination. And that once you get to success, then you can binge out on Netflix all you like, or you can binge out on bonbons, or you no longer have the pressure. And I think what you're seeing is that's not true. And that not only do we have to define success, but the definition of success is very different at different points in our lives, depending on what else is going on.
Yeah. And you know, it's a great point. I've talked a lot with my colleagues about this as well, but it's always been a moving target for me. So I've always been a quota, exceed quota kind of person. And so, you know, when I quit my job, I mean, scared to death, I just wanted to replace my pharmaceutical sales income. And then we hit that, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm not there yet. And then, you know, I wanted to have my first, I don't know, multi 6-figure year, and you hit that. And then it's like, okay, just when we get to $1 million, and then you hit that. And so there's a little bit of inner work that has to go on now. I'm kind of to the inner work, like, okay, you can keep chasing these carrots, but it's not doing it for you like you thought it did. So what else needs to be there? And so it's you're right. Success is not a destination, but for a long time, I thought I had the mistaken belief that it was. If I can just do X, the whole world's going to be fabulous. And it is fabulous some days. And some days it sucks beyond the telling of it.
Well, I think that, and that's the challenge, I think, for this kind of new era, is that we have to learn how to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And learn how to enjoy the journey, as opposed to just thinking about what's the end game. You know, what's the destination? Especially a lot of women get to the situation where they've achieved everything they thought was successful, and then are left holding a bag and saying, well, now what?
Well, yeah. So what are the tips for that? So I mean, what are the tips and solutions to enjoy the journey? So somebody gave me a pillow. Everybody's seen this quote, but embrace the journey or something like that. And I literally was like, oh my God, I hate this. I don't want to embrace the journey. I want to be on the beach with the margarita. I don't even like margaritas. With a glass of champagne, watching my daughter grow up with multi-million dollars in the bank. I mean, you know, whatever. And so how do you embrace the journey when you just want to get there?
And I think that's a great question. So what I did is when my kids were babies, that's when I started my own company, because I wanted to be in control of my own time. Yeah. And I wanted to be a workaholic, but the hours that I wanted to be a workaholic, and I wanted flexibility in my scheduling. And after about a year, when everything was going great, I said, you know what? Every mother who has children should have her own business, because you can be the boss and you can be in control of many things. You can never be in control of everything. And the number one thing you cannot be in control of are those unknown variables like health problems that creep up on you and always seem to come out of nowhere. Of course, many times there's lots of warning signs, especially we talked about people with chronic illnesses like diabetes. There's lots of warning signs before you get there, or people with heart disease, which is the number one killer of women. But I think for me, it was very important to define success. And I literally did sit down every January 1st and write it down, and not just do the New Year's resolutions, but write down what the goals were. And the first 10 years of my business, when my kids were younger, I actually had income goals. And the way I structured it is once I got to a certain income, I was done for the year. I was just done.
Oh, now that's creative.
I set it up.
I like that.
I set it up so that I was generally able to achieve that goal about the week before Thanksgiving. And so basically then I was kind of off from Thanksgiving to the first week in January, which just coincidentally was always a really slow time for my business anyway. Now I'm sure, you know, there were times when I got great offers during that time period and I didn't turn them down because I had achieved the goal. But it basically allowed me to take the pressure off myself to keep going and keep running on the treadmill. And I did feel like one of my measures of success was being able to be the kind of parent that I wanted to be. And that meant, sometimes that meant taking red eyes so that I could get to be at the Mommy and Me class at 9 o'clock in the morning. Yep. And sometimes it meant changing in the car. I would change from a business suit into my, you know, sweatsuit in the car and go to the soccer games, you know, and, you know, that was challenging. That was really juggling, but it gave me this tremendous sense of satisfaction.
Last year at a soccer game, I was coming from an event and I was in pearls and heels and a dress and it was cold. And so I threw on a pair of jeans under my dress. I looked like hobo trying to, and I had this coat on and heels, big heels. And I remember my husband saying, you didn't have time to change? I'm like, I did change. This is all my heels are sinking in the mud. And I'm like, go hell yeah. People are looking at me like I'm crazy. So I get that. I totally get that.
All right. So one of my success factor tips is to always have sneakers in the car.
Yeah, I need sneakers. I went to the dog park today in heels. Somehow I'm always there in heels.
So yeah, I find heels. Years and years ago, I did a television show. I used to be the women's health correspondent for NBC for the Weekend Today show and the Later Today show. And we did a show on the health consequences of wearing heels. And
don't tell me. Don't tell
terrible in terms of your feet, your knees, your injuries. But also if you're going to be a woman who's literally running from one place to the other, you have to be in comfortable footwear. And I think actually, if we look at measures of success, like if you ask, you know, if you were to ask me, like, how did you know when you were really had achieved success, it was when I felt comfortable enough to just wear sneakers from the car directly to my destination. And then I would change. I didn't feel like I needed to have the heels on from the car into the meeting. I didn't change until I got to the meeting. And that was tremendously gratifying.
Heels, though. I love them. I love them. I love them.
But they're slowing you down.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I bet I could run a marathon in a couple of years.
Actually, I remember when that line of shoes came out. What's the name of them now? I'm not going to get it right.
Cole Haan Nike Air?
The one that had the, they could play basketball. Oh, Easy Spirit.
Oh, yeah.
They had an ad where they had women WNBA players playing basketball in these shoes. And I remember when I got my first pair of those, I thought, oh my God, I could actually play basketball in these shoes. Yeah. They were awesome. They were really awesome. But now
all of my pharmaceutical sales rep, like on my team that I worked with, we all wore, like I bought a pair, this was years ago, Cole Haan Nike Air. So
those are great. Those are great.
And then I was like, oh, you'll all have to go get them. Like I sold a lot of Cole Haan Nike Air that year. My whole team, then my female doctor started wearing them. I was like telling you, they're the best thing ever, standing on concrete all day.
Yeah. Actually, there's a woman orthopedic surgeon who developed a line of very attractive but very comfortable shoes. Rose something. I think they're called Rose. The brand is Rose something.
I don't know.
But let's get to other tips as far as managing your stress. So what are you doing to manage your stress levels in terms of this transitional time? And you did tell me you're moving homes right now, and that is one of the top 5 most stressful life events on every study. The top 5 most stressful life events are, of course, a death in the family, a divorce, a move, a change in job, or a serious illness in one of your children.
Yeah, it's a stressful time. I mean, I'll be honest. This is our second move in a year because of my husband. We did a corporate temporary assignment, and now we're back. That was a stressful thing, trying to decide, do we let him go for 6 months or do we keep our family together? That was, pros and cons. So this is our second move in a year. That's stressful. Mm-hmm. He started a new position. That's stressful as a family. So it's a stressful time. I think that, one of the things that I give myself permission to do is while I'm attempting to do all the things I know to do, I have a schedule. Mm-hmm. So I have work hours and I have non-work hours. Mm-hmm. And I used to have my laptop in my lap during non-work hours all the time. I don't anymore. Normally I have an office. I shut the door. When I walk out, I'm done unless there is an emergency, and it better be an emergency because that's my time to be present with my family. I also I'm trying to schedule in time to do the gym. I'm getting better about that. But I love television. I can completely veg out and watch Scandal or
watch Scandal.
Yeah. And that's my thing. Mm-hmm. So, to manage your stress, I think that for me, one of the things that really helped was having a separation of church and state, or a separation of home and office, and saying, these are my work hours. Mm-hmm. This is when I am CEO lady, right? And this is when I am mama. And I try not to let the two overlap, but they do.
They do.
And they have to. They're going to overlap. Mm-hmm. And, you make the best decision that you can at that time. And I often laugh and tell my audience, there may be days when CEO has been in charge, large and in charge, and we may not have clean underwear at our house, especially if we haven't, when we may not.
So the best advice I ever got was from the late Bernadine Healy, who was the first woman ever director of the National Institutes of Health. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us. But when I was a medical student, I listened to a speech she gave about balancing work and family. Yeah. She said, the best advice I can give you is to hire the best household help you can afford, whether or not you have children.
Yeah.
And that was really great advice. And every time I felt guilty about that, I felt like she had given me permission.
I love that. Shonda Rhimes talks about that some in the book, her book, Year of Yes or whatever, about, having really good help. So, and we've been fortunate enough to have really good help. However, there's no room for help in the apartment. I mean, in the
the temporary.
It's our 100-pound golden retriever, my husband, my daughter, and me in 2 rooms. So once we get settled, we will absolutely, and I think that that's great. I think the other thing, the great way I love that you said that was, or the way that you quoted that is, hire the best help you can afford.
Right. And sometimes the best help is unpaid help.
It is.
And one of the things that overachieving women have a hard time doing is asking for help, whether it's asking for help from our spouse or partner, asking for help from the children, because there are a lot of tasks that a 9-year-old can do for herself. And when we're overachievers, we know it's easier for us to do it than to wait for them to do it or to help them to do it. Whether it's asking for help from our friends, asking for help from our coworkers. We don't like to ask for help. We feel like that makes us seem weak or that capable.
I wonder too if you don't even think about it. So a confession of mine last year, I can remember, maybe it was 2 years ago, but I can remember I just fell apart in the kitchen and said to my husband, "Can you just make Hallianna's lunch?" and I mean, it was a ridiculous ask, because if I think back, all I had to do was ask. He's never like, right? But I mean, I was like, going through Tuesday folder and getting ready for this party at school and getting ready to travel out of town and blah, blah, blah. I mean, the laundry list and I just lost it. And he was like, "Yeah, all you had to do was ask." And I'm like, "Oh my God, are you this dense, Kendrick? All you had to do was ask." It never dawned.
Actually, that's a great book title. All you had to do was ask.
It is.
And we don't think to ask. And I think that is because we want somebody to offer. And because we know that we would offer.
Yeah.
If we saw, if the situation was in reverse, there's so many things that we do for our partners or our children that they don't ask us. We just do it. And I think sometimes we would like people to just do for us without asking.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've never thought about it like that, but I think I wanted to be seen as the martyr. This is embarrassing, but the person keeping everything together and a million balls in the air and being a rock star mom and CEO and wonderful wife, which I wasn't any of those things. That's the brand anyway. But yeah, I think I want to be seen as a martyr and have my husband say, "Hey, sweetie, you're doing so much. Can I help?" Well, he's busy too.
Right.
I mean, he's got a corporate job and trying to be rock star dad. It just never.
Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes we have to take a step back and look at the simple solution.
Yeah.
So, I think the number one tip we've come up with is sometimes all you have to do is ask. But how are you doing in terms of sleep? Because sleep is another huge, you sleep great. Oh, that's awesome.
Great. I used to not. So something has happened to me after I turned 40. I get 8 hours of sleep a night at least.
Awesome.
I don't compromise on it, because when I do, I am not as productive. I am not a happy person. I'm not fun to be around. And I've learned that as I've gotten older, but my head hits the pillow and I'm out and I sleep until the alarm wakes up.
Because one of the big problems that women in their 40s have, actually the number one problem that women in their 40s have, is sleep deprivation. Interestingly, the number two problem is depression. And I personally think that those two things are really interconnected.
Yeah.
Of course, in the 40s, also perimenopause is starting, and that is, accompanied by a lot of hormonal changes and sleep disturbances. But I think the most important things for women are, to just be aware of the problem and aware of the issue. And if it's not causing you a problem, then it's not a problem. But number two, then say, okay, what am I doing to manage my stress? And you mentioned a bunch of really good things. The gym, the sleep is excellent. The asking for help is excellent. And I think those are all really, really great tips for all of our listeners. Anyway, I know we have to wrap this up, but before you go, one of the things I like to ask all of our guests is, now that you're a wise woman, of a certain age, if you could give any health advice or health tip to your 21-year-old self, what would it be?
Eat salad. So I'm afraid that needs just a little bit of context to it. So I was a self-proclaimed, if I don't like it, I won't eat it, I won't drink it, which worked out well for me. I didn't drink a lot of alcohol. And I didn't like the taste. I don't like to acquire a taste. I never understood it. You don't like it, why the flip are you putting it? That goes against you when it comes to vegetables. And I never acquired a taste for vegetables. I was a stereotypical kid, sit there, you can't leave the table till you eat your broccoli. I ate my broccoli, I threw it up. And so my parents were like, hands off, what, you win. And our test of wills, fine, if you're going to throw up your vegetables, you win. But I never acquired a taste, and I didn't acquire a taste for vegetables until about 2 years ago. I hired the best help I could find. I hired a nutritionist, and she said, "I'm going to teach you how to make these vegetables taste good." And I still don't love them. I can't ever think of a day that goes by that I think, I want some green vegetables. but I eat them.
Okay.
And I don't know if, causation or correlation does not mean causation, but since then I certainly sleep better. That's when I started sleeping better. I certainly have more energy. I also relax better. I'm sure I'm healthier overall from a heart standpoint and a cholesterol standpoint as well. But I would say eat, suck it up, sweetheart. You'll have to learn to eat something green sooner or later. Do it now.
What was her best tip in terms of making the vegetables more tasty for you?
Well, it turns out I didn't know how to cook. So, like what I considered a vegetable, she's like, I wouldn't eat that. So she gave me, it was fruits and vegetables. Like she gave me this wonderful recipe for French toast with fresh blueberries and fresh strawberries and maple syrup. And we call it Kendrick's breakfast now because I ate it so much. She said, oh my God, you're going to develop an allergy to it. We got to eat some other stuff, Kendrick. But putting vegetables in things like making an omelet and putting spinach inside of it. And sort of learning to putting spinach on your
sandwich. I call that veg it up. So what I recommend to people as a tip is just add vegetables to everything you'd be eating anyway.
Yeah.
And for some people who really don't like eating vegetables, putting them in smoothies and shakes is.
Yeah. And I did that for a while. My favorite thing, and this is.
Or soup.
Soup. Yeah. My favorite thing is to put spinach. Spinach is a go-to for me. Yeah. All over the top of my spaghetti. Like I cover it in spaghetti sauce, and my husband's like, that is the most messed up looking thing. I'm like, I know, but it's healthy.
And you like it. The other thing you could do is in the last minute of boiling your pasta, throw in the spaghetti into the pot. And it just cooks it a little bit and gets the flavor and the water in your pasta. And then when you strain it, your spinach is perfectly softened.
Never thought about that.
With your pasta. And then if you really want to be clever, you get spinach pasta and mix in.
Yeah, I have done that. Yeah, I have done that.
Yeah. And my other best tip for cooking vegetables, if you haven't discovered this yet, and I did this with my kids and it made them love vegetables from the time they were young, is saute them in teriyaki sauce.
Okay, I have not done that.
Oh, it's awesome.
Okay.
And the best brand is, and I don't have any relationship with this company, although they should call me and I could be their corporate spokesperson because I talk about selling things for people. I've told everybody about this. It's a brand called Soy Vey. Very, very teriyaki. And just saute your vegetables, lightly saute them in this teriyaki sauce, and you will love them.
We're going to give that a try in my house. I will.
Okay.
When we finally get in our house and we have somewhere to cook, I'm going to take a picture and send it to you.
Okay. The final, most important question, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm everywhere. Probably the best place to find me is kendrickshope.com. Mm-hmm. We have there's so much content there that you can find anything and everything you could possibly want to know.
That is awesome. Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming in the ladies' room, and please come back again.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Take care. Okay, we are out. Was that good for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it was good for you.
It was fun. I think we got some really good information out about shingles and stress and workaholicism, and it was fun.
Good deal. Thank you so much. I look forward to having you on my show as well.
Likewise. And I will let you know when the air date is going to be. I think
please do, and we'll promote it.
Air date. Please do.
All right.
Good luck with your move.
Thank you. Thank you for your kindness today.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Have a good day.
Really great getting to know you. Take care.
Bye.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.